fire. We got to say goodbye to Josh. And did he then say, we don't know the full story yet. We haven't heard that, right? Yeah. Mark Davis hasn't shared it, and we may never hear it. But did they came as a package deal? Does that mean they go? Now, I can outline for you here that I believe they both were not doing a good job. If you look at the Raiders in the player acquisition front, been awful, right? They were not able to improve their offensive line. They did not improve their defensive line, except for a couple draft picks here and there. But even the drafts, the 2 drafts that Dave Ziegler had in Las Vegas, nothing has come of it. You have a roster that is completely without stocked youth talent. There's just nobody there. Nobody looks at the Raiders roster and says, yeah, there's 10 really good core guys. There's 3 core guys, right? If you look at Max Crosby, you look at Josh Jacobs, you look at Devontae Adams, and that's it. And so when you look at that, it's not surprising to figure that they get rid of the GM. And the one thing too, and I have my proposal. You ready for this, Ryan?
Yes, sir.
I have the answer for Mark Davis. I have it. I have the answer if he would only listen to me, which he won't, right? Because who am I? But anyway,
I don't think he listens to anyone,
Mark
so you're not alone.
Clearly. But Mark Davis moves his team to Las Vegas. Team's value goes through the roof, right? It's the 6th most valuable franchise in the NFL now. It used to be last or 29th, something like that. So he gets there. He makes a good business decision. So on the business side, Raiders are doing well. He can't make football decisions. It's not. I'm not insulting the guy. He just can't. Like, I can't fix plumbing. I just can't do it. It's not my skill set, right? So I'm going to hire somebody who knows what they're doing. I think, Ryan, Mark Davis needs somebody between him and that GM position, and he needs to stay out of the hiring GMs and coaches. Really. Now, he's not Jerry Jones. He's not one of those guys, and he's admitted that he's not a football. He doesn't have a football mind like his dad did. So why not go hire a president of football operations, whatever you want to call this person, whatever the title is, and let them, somebody who knows what they're doing, just, if you're the owner, turn the keys over to the car and let them drive. That's what I would do.
Well, we've seen tons of organizations do that, where they have exactly that. They have a president of football operations, or sometimes they call it the VP of football operations, and then they have a GM, and then it all goes down from there. So it's not anything like new. You think if you want to be successful, you kind of learn to put your people in situations and bring people in that know what they're doing and let them, run the show. Did you, real quick, Scott? And I don't believe this, but the story that's been circulating around about how the firing went down. Obviously, we got to at least mention it here on the NautZone. Did you hear that story? I'm sure, being close to it, that he was fired via fortune cookie.
Yes, and it turned out, and I forgot the guy's name now. I should know it. The guy from Barstool Sports,
PFT,
kind of floated that out there. PFT, yes. So, and it got some people. I had a friend send it to me. He's like, "This is funny," and so I shared it and said, "I can't confirm the source on this." It was a joke, but it was funny, and. The interesting thing, though, Ryan, is the way the Raiders have been operating for the last 20 plus years. You can kind of believe it, and that's what I tell Raider fans who don't like when their team's made fun of. I'm like, that's sort of how it's gone down with what you've had with ownership, the inability to kind of keep people in the building, the inability to win. It kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to lay in the bed you keep, right, or you make, and they've kind of been that organization for a number of years. And I give Raider fans a lot of credit, because with all the circus shows and all the moves, I mean, I don't know if a team has moved as often as the Raiders, and the Raider Nation is still one of the most prominent fan bases in the world when it comes to sporting. So I give Raider fans a lot of credit that they just kind of take it in stride. And I'm sure you deal with it a lot more than I do, obviously. So I'm sure you see a lot of the negative stuff, but I'm just impressed that, hey, they still keep coming back and they still stay strong with their team, regardless of what's going on.
That is true. Very loyal fan base, as there's several out there. But from their perspective, yeah, it's kind of like Raider Nation for life. The interesting thing here for me, though, is it going to be easy? Now, money is money. I get it. It's a motivator. But is it going to be easy for them to hire a coach? If I'm an up-and-coming coach, so let's say Mike McDaniel is still with the 49ers, doesn't go to the Dolphins, right? And so he's looking for a job. A guy like that, a really dynamic young coach who's looking for that step up. Am I going to go there? I'm going to look at the past record of the team, what it's done with coaches. I mean, if you think about 12 coaches, right? 12 coaches in the last 20 years. It's unbelievable. Now, if you're a coach, do you want to go there? I mean, that's a legitimate question because it was Gruden and then, of course, McDaniels who was looking for a second chance. But if you're somebody who's groomed themselves and you're really good and it's time to take the jump up, is that the job you would take?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, from the surface level, Scott, I think us looking, it's like, why would anyone put themselves in that situation? But yeah, I mean, you look at human nature. I mean, how do you not just, there's 32 of these jobs in the entire world. And if someone
Yeah.
comes knocking, how do you say no to that, regardless of what's happened in the past? Like, it's human nature, right? Like, any of us that are up for a promotion, you might know of a situation that's whether it's toxic, whether it leads down a bad trail, but in your mind, you're the one that's going to fix it. You're like, I can't say no to this. Like, I'm the one to fix it. So that's one thing. Two, it's still the Raiders brand. It's now in Vegas with a beautiful facility. Based on Now they've been bad hires, but based on the last two hires that Davis had made, he's basically given his coaches full control to do what they want. I mean, John Gruden had that
Mm-hmm.
10-year, $100 million deal to basically just run everything. And then Josh McDaniels had a lot of power too. So you're not necessarily a puppet. You can kind of do whatever you want as long as you do it right. So I think that's too enticing, those kind of four things. And then, obviously Davis has to do some things to, like you mentioned earlier, to put some pieces in place to make it better. You can look right into the same division, right? The Denver Broncos had their own issues they had no ownership group. It was just a trust that was running it. They had all these different coaches, very similar to Raiders. They didn't have a quarterback for a number of years. And so then they finally go out and hire like a real GM in George Payton, and then obviously when they get the ownership group, that's the backing that was able to get then Sean Payton over there. And it's not that they're doing that well this year yet, but I think they've put the building blocks, and so the Raiders kind of need to almost follow suit in that, as we need to have that hierarchy, but then still give our coach the keys to the kingdom that is Raiders Nation.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think yeah, you get the opportunity. You don't want to say no because maybe it doesn't come up again. I mean, that's happened to people. I think where they've been offered a job and like, oh, I'm going to wait for the next one, and then something happens and you don't get the other opportunity. So I think that's true, and you're right about the facilities and kind of from that side of the fence, it's been good, but it's just how are you going to develop? And the Raiders are in the position where Ryan they have to get a franchise quarterback. I mean, look where they're at in
Yeah.
the division. The narrative that Russell Wilson has done. I know he's not the same Russell Wilson, but he's having a very good year actually, even though the team's having a terrible year. So you look
He's
at the
competent.
Raiders in the division. Yeah, exactly. You look at the Raiders in that division, and they're woefully behind when it comes to the quarterback position. So to me, there's so many pieces to this Raiders puzzle right now that if they don't get it right, I mean, it's been a long time already. If they don't get it right this time with everything they have going for them in Vegas, I don't know that they ever will because they got to do the coach, GM, quarterback, and then, oh, by the way, you got to build the rest of the roster too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easier said than done, but it is kind of perfect timing that they can do it all three at once. This is a very heavy quarterback draft class. They're in a position now where they'll probably not win many more games down the stretch. So it's like they're setting themselves up to have a really powerful offseason, which if you're a Raiders fan at this point, you're kind of looking forward to the offseason and just seeing what can happen. Quickly, Scott, before we move on, I just want to give a quick shout out to Antonio Pierce. Got his head coaching start right here at Long Beach Poly, down here in Los
Yeah.
Angeles, where I live. Great high school. The Jackrabbits. I went to college at Long Beach State, so shout out there. And from there, he went and was the DC over at Arizona State on Herm Edwards' staff.
Yes.
So cool to see him kind of get the interim head coach title.
Yes, and all the links there, Ron. So obviously you're in Los Angeles. You talked about Pauly, and then my daughter is a Sun Devil, so she went to Arizona State. So, and I was a big Herm Edwards fan. It's unfortunate how things went downhill there so quickly. I thought he was going to really have a nice program there for the Pac-12. So, oh well.
Yeah.
All right.
They got it.
So there.
They got a good
go
one in
ahead.
Dillingham though. So I just
Yes, they do.
Arizona State's got a good one in Dillingham, so I think they'll do good. But go ahead.
I do. They'll get it back. It'll take a bit. All right, let's switch gears now here on the NautZone, and we're going to talk about the trade deadline. Of course, that passed yesterday, and because of the Raider news nationally, it just kind of got drowned out a little bit. But some good moves here. I thought some teams improved themselves. Obviously, there were teams like the Washington Commanders looking to dump off their talent. They trade both bookends at the defensive end position. But I'd love to hear sort of, you have winners, you have losers. But who do you see out of this group? It was again one of the busiest trade deadlines in the last 20 years. By the way, it was since '92 or through '93, even more than 20 years. So you saw a lot of players moving, and there were some big names, and then there were some other I think, under the radar deals that have helped significantly teams who needed help at certain positions. But what did you see? What stuck out for you when you saw a trade deadline list pop yesterday at 4 o'clock Eastern?
Yeah, I think we can do the obvious one first. Chase Young going to
Yeah.
the Niners. And I'm going to take a different stance on this. I'm not saying I think it was a bad move by any means. Obviously, Chase Young is 24 years old. Obviously, they'll try to get that contract extended, so he's there long term. You get to pair him with Nick Bosa and the front they already have, and it's just like, how do you do anything against that front? But the stance I'll take is different. The Niners, and I obviously I cover the LA teams here, so we're real close with the Niners in the division. A lot of Niner fans here in Los Angeles, a lot of conversations. So this will sound like hate, but it's not. It's just a different stance in kind of my opinion. And the Niners, it was known, Scott, that they were the other team in the Matthew Stafford sweepstakes 2 years ago when the Rams ended up getting Matthew Stafford, the whole story down in Cabo. They got that happen. They go on and win the Super Bowl the next year. And ever since they missed out on Stafford, the Niners have kind of been swinging for the fences via trade, via basically taking the Les Snead Rams model of trading away draft capital for players. And obviously they tried to do that with the young quarterback and Trey Lance. Didn't work out, but they get the Christian McCaffrey trade. And now they get this big one with Chase Young. What's interesting, though, is every one of their moves that they've done have basically been to fortify strengths that they already have. I mean, I don't think anyone out there was saying the Niners were a weak defensive front. They were probably a top 3 defensive front in all of football before this trade, behind maybe the Cowboys and Eagles. They were right there. When you look at Christian McCaffrey, we've known that Kyle Shanahan can make any running back a 1,000-yard running back. Now, Christian McCaffrey is a different caliber, and obviously, 17 straight games with a touchdown. The dude's great. But when you look at the way their team is constructed, it's interesting to me that they keep going after positions that they're already good at instead of addressing positions of weakness. And, we don't need to get into a long song and dance about Brock Purdy, but the team's lost 3 straight. And they haven't had great quarterback play, and he's thrown, 5 interceptions over those 3 games and only threw 2 before that or something like that. So just an interesting side of it. It's a good trade. I'm not saying it's a bad move by any means, but it's just interesting that they keep going after positions that they're already good at instead of maybe positions that they need to take that next step.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great take there, because I think that you look at that and you're like, okay, so, and when I saw that he was going to San Francisco, I'm like, really? I mean, that's like, hey, I got a car with 4 tires. Now I got a 5th tire just in case, right? It's like, what are you going to do with it? Okay, yeah, you got a spare in the trunk already. Now you got another spare, to stick in the garage. But Chase Young also too, I mean, we don't know he'll be there long term, right? So he's coming up on the end of his deal. He's been injury prone. I think that's been a great player, but just been injury prone. So you got that piece of it too. Is he going to stay healthy the rest of now? He's been healthy so far this year, but can they keep him healthy, and does he fit there in San Francisco? But to your point about not bolstering position, and this is why I took a lot of heat from my fellow editors and staffers at Sportsnaut when we did our preseason predictions. And by the way, I've been terrible picking games this year, so they make fun of me every week. But when I made the projections, one of the questions was, who will be the most surprising team in the NFL this season, and who will be the most disappointing? My surprise was the Seahawks, which I'm getting a little closer on. And I said the most disappointing team was going to be the 49ers. And I said that because of Brock Purdy. I just thought it wasn't, again, to your point, not hating on him, not saying he's not a good quarterback. I just didn't have enough sample size. It was such a crazy Cinderella story. And so I had questions at quarterback. And when you have questions at quarterback in the NFL, that's bad. So I did. And then, of course, they start 5-0, and I look like I have an egg on my face. But now they've lost 3. Yeah. And now they've lost 3 in a row. And a lot of it, I mean, not all of it, but much of it has to do with quarterback play. So I agree with you there. I wasn't expecting them to go out and get a quarterback at the trade deadline, because I don't think there was anybody available that would have been a huge difference maker for them. I mean, Kirk Cousins went down with an injury. Would Minnesota have traded him? Probably not. But a guy like that, I could see them go get, right, to your point. And he would probably go there for the remainder of the year, because you had a chance to get to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I don't understand the philosophy there. And then toss on top of it the whole Trey Lance and the draft picks and all that. They got lucky on that one. And everybody was giving them credit at the end of last year, saying, look, they got their quarterback anyway, so who cares? It's like, well, might be a little too soon to say that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why, us at the LA Football Network actually saw the Rams with their offseason as crazy as it was into kind of like the remodel that Les Snead called it. But I said, you know what, and they're 3-5 right now, but they're a game out of 7th place. And I had said preseason, this is a team I think that can contend in the NFC just because of the quarterbacks in the NFC specifically in their division. And we've seen it kind of rear its ugly head. So what else stood out to you though in this trade deadline?
What perplexed me now, because listen, as a GM of an NFL team, anytime you can go out and get somebody that's going to make your team better, okay, I get it. But I'm looking at the Bears and Montez Sweat, and I'm like, you have so many issues, and he's on an expiring deal. So Montez Sweat comes over. I like the guy, but I'm like, what are you doing here? Because do you have some deal ahead of time, at least like a gentleman's handshake, that you're going to sign a new deal with the Bears? And should the Bears be giving a deal like that to Montez Sweat when they got to go get probably another quarterback and another bunch of positions, including up front on the offensive line? So I get swinging for the fences, but I just think it's weird with his deal expiring and kind of what they're doing.
Yeah, this one made no sense, especially, and this is no disrespect to Montez Sweat, but they gave up a 2nd-round pick for Sweat, and the Niners get Chase Young for a 3rd-round pick. So even the value was almost too high. But the only thing I can make of it, Scott, because it was a head scratcher to me, it's a team that's in full rebuild, and they're probably going to move on from their coach. They have questions at quarterback, and this is purely me just trying to think through the process. I have no sources on this, but the only thing I can think of is that, and I covered Caleb Williams extensively covering USC out here in LA. And and I think this got overblown in my opinion, but there were the stories about, if it's not a team he wants to go to in the NFL, he's going to come back to college and they need to kind of prove to me like that they want me there and they're not just tanking, blah, blah, blah. So the only thing that I could see is them basically making a move to show Caleb Williams, look, we're building now. We're not just tanking and forcing you into a terrible situation. We've got a young piece on the defense now. We're going to get more on the offense for you. We're going to bring in a coach that you want at the end of the year. Because other than that, it makes zero sense why you trade a 2nd-round pick in a rebuild for a player with an expiring contract.
Yeah, it was really strange. And I just don't. I mean, the Bears organization is perplexing to me. It's just the Bears and the Raider organization. There's a lot of similarities with that and different family structures and whatnot. But you just wonder, like, how come you can't develop a quarterback in 30 years, right? How come you can't keep a consistent winner? You perform when you do have talent, and then when you don't have talent, you're one of the worst teams in the league. So we'll have to see. But that was one of them. The other one I want to mention is one that, again, I mentioned the Seahawks. I was high on the Seahawks in that division, even though it's a tough division outside of Arizona. Was the Leonard Williams trade, because they're renting him, granted, but the fact that the Seahawks went out and addressed a position that they absolutely needed, especially with what you were talking about, how the Rams are playing, and of course we'll see how the 49ers pan out as well. But they really needed a spark on the defensive side just to up the game a little bit. And they went out and got him. And yeah, again, it's a good trade for them because they're not on the hook. The Giants paid $10 million of his contract. Now the Giants got a nice draft pick in return, but the Seahawks have a ton of draft capital. So they don't really lose in this one. And the Giants win too. So it's one of those weird deals where I think both sides netted out really well. And in the short term, the Seahawks get a lot better on defense.
Yeah, home run for both teams. I completely agree, and love seeing Pete Carroll get his old USC guys back in the building. But Scott, this feels like I feel bad. I'm not trying to keep bringing this back to LA, but this feels very similar to the Von Miller trade with the Rams when it was basically a 2 and a 3 for Von Miller. Obviously, they wanted to extend him long term. We know it didn't happen, but it ended up being a rental, and hey, they wouldn't win a Super Bowl with it. So this feels like that with the Seahawks. They get that guy they needed absolutely on that defensive line. It's a win-win. They give up seemingly a lot on paper, but like you said, based on the way they draft, based on the capital they have, it's going to net out just fine for them. And the big question for them, which it is with every team, is they're going to go as far as Geno Smith takes them. And this is a great move for them, but can Geno Smith get this team over the hump in the playoffs to really make a run? Because they have a lot of pieces everywhere. They got a great running game. The offensive line is the best it's been in many years. Obviously, they have 3 tremendous receivers, and now the defense is seemingly improved, and they have obviously good coaching with Pete Carroll, who's been a stalwart there forever. So it's going to come down to Geno and what he can do with this team moving forward. I
agree 100% with you. And I think that the Seahawks will will sneakily, that's not a word, is it? I don't know. You got to correct my
Works for
grammar
me.
sometimes on here. Be in play for a quarterback going into this draft. Like you talked about the heavy draft. Now they gave Geno Smith $105 million, right? But if I believe, and I'm looking it up now as we're on the air here, just to look at the contract. So after this year, they have an out, which is a 17.4 dead cap hit. They got to pay him $27.5 million. But if the Seahawks, now they're doing well, but the Seahawks with all that draft capital, they might be able to move up bottom of the first round, top of the second round, get a quarterback of the future as well. Because I think that's part of the missing piece here. Pete Carroll's turned that thing around faster than anybody anticipated. So they got a lot of needs, but I think, you know what? I respect that what they're doing is they're going to try to make a little run here. I don't know how deep they can go. Again, you got the 49ers sitting and the Rams sitting right there next to you. It's going to be tough. But that was the other trade that stuck out to me. The Rasul Douglas trade to Buffalo as well. We can close with that one. That was a point of need for them. Obviously, losing Tre'Davious White for the season. They lost Milano for the season. And you know what, Ryan? This isn't going to be popular. I know how rabid Bills fans are. That team is at the end of the string, baby. I mean, they got the quarterback, but their Super Bowl aspirations, I don't think they're going to go much past this year because they have EG, especially on the defense.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think their coach is on the proverbial hot seat, if you will. And, obviously he's had a lot of winning seasons, but they've never made that leap. And, they just haven't quite gotten out of their way. When it comes down to big games, they don't win them. And so, yeah, I think this is kind of a Super Bowl appearance or bust for this team. And if they don't make it, they move on and get back in obviously, like you said, they have the quarterback and they go out and get a young, maybe offensive mind to pair with and to move forward. But we'll see where that comes. But yeah, the Rasul Douglas trade, I think, is a good trade for him. And, obviously they need help on that back end for anything that they're going to do because they play in a gauntlet. They have a big one this week, Scott, against the Bengals. So we'll see if he has an impact early.
Yeah, and that's what I want to ask you. We got about 5 minutes left here on the show. And by the way, thanks for being with us here on the NautZone. Every Wednesday live, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. And we will get a little sassier as things move on as we get comfortable here with what's going on. But we appreciate you being with us. Also, do us a big favor. Make sure you subscribe here to the Sportsnaut YouTube channel. Hit on that notifications bell. That way, every time we go live, you will get a notification and can join us and tell us if we're full of crap or not. But this is what I want to talk about, too. We talked in the first segment about Josh McDaniels getting fired. Who's the next coach? Do you think there's going to be another midseason firing and when you look at around the NFL?
I mean, mid-season is always interesting because you've cashed in the season. I mean, everyone that wants to, there's fans that are like, oh, make a move. Let's see if it creates a spark. It doesn't work like that. I mean, because you're making someone else then do double the work. If you move a coordinator up to head coach, they're doing double the work. So when you fire a coach mid-season, your statement is we're cashing in and we're just moving on to the offseason. The one I can see happening, just because I'm close to it, is, and this, I don't think it will, because I think, and I don't know if we were going to get to hot takes or not, I think the Chargers are going to go on a run. But if they just complete falling flat, they won last week, they moved to 3-4. But if they just lose like the next 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, then I could see maybe them moving on from Brandon Staley and saying, okay, the season's done. It's time to kind of hit the refresh button. But it would take a bad losing streak and basically being out of the playoff picture in the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah. Well, see, you started hot takes. I love it. So that's your hot take. But I think Brandon Staley, and I don't think it'll happen. But if he lost the next 3 games, I know they're playing the Jets, or they're playing the Jets this week.
Yeah.
If he lost 3 in a row, could he be in trouble?
Yeah, I think so. If they lost 3 in a row, for sure. I don't think they will. I think they're turning the corner of getting it right, which was going to be kind of my hot take, is I think they go on a run. I mean, right now, Scott, they're 1 game out of the 6th seed in the AFC, which is crazy with how talented the AFC is. So, I know a lot of fans have already wanted to hit the eject button there, but you're 1 game out of the playoffs and half a game out of the 7th seed, basically. So, until you're kind of out of contention, but if they were to lose 3 games in a row or so, then I think it's very likely.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm going to give you my hot take for today, and I've already touched on it a couple times. I'm going to call it, man. I'm telling you, the 49ers host the Seahawks on December 10th. And then the Seahawks have the Cardinals the last game of the season. I'm going to call it now. I'm telling you, the Seahawks Gino's going to get on fire. I'm not a big Gino fan, but I got the weird feeling, man. It's not just because I want to be right. I'm calling it. I think the Seahawks are going to, I think the 49ers are going to continue to struggle. I think until they can get the quarterback position, I think they're going to fall off. So to me, it's going to come down to the end of the season. I think the Rams, 49ers, and Seahawks are all going to be pretty close there. And I haven't looked, you know the Rams schedule better than I do and what it looks like down the stretch. But that's my hot take for right now. My other hot take, and then I'll give it back to you, is that I do believe, you ready for this? I do believe that eventually the Browns are going to eat the contract of Deshaun Watson because I don't think they have any choice. As bad as that is and sounds, the guy won't play. And it's crazy to me. Look, if you're injured, you're injured. But after all they went through and then they give him that guarantee, and you know what? It's going to be a perfect bulletin board example of, hey, NFL executives, don't give anybody a fully guaranteed contract, especially when they're coming off a weird situation.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, got to be one of the worst contracts and signings in NFL history. So, and I would be happy to see that. So, hey, let's get DTR, former Bruin, a chance out there. Who, my other hot take, if we're going more long-term, I think the Packers will move on from Jordan Love after just one season starting. I know he was the plan after Aaron Rodgers. They obviously traded him, and he was the guy this year. And, you know, they're just 2 wins right now. They play a Rams team that they should beat. It's a home game, and they're going to be playing a backup quarterback most likely. But I could see them losing that. And, you know, obviously, like I said, a very heavy draft with quarterbacks this year. So I would not be shocked at all if after just one season, the Packers say, all right, time to hit the refresh and go get a quarterback again and hope we find another Rodgers.
Yeah, and you know what? We talk about this on our Raiders show too, because we get people who say, oh, I want this quarterback, that quarterback. In today's NFL, and disagree with me if you need to, okay, and call me on it. I think in today's NFL, let's say you're a bad team and you're the Carolina Panthers. I think Bryce Young's going to be fine. But anyway, let's say you drafted Bryce Young and he ended up being somebody who didn't pan out. So he ends up being a bust and you kind of know it immediately, right? Or a couple of years like Jordan Love. Then what you do is I think you just keep drafting quarterbacks until you get the right one. I think you have to. So if you have 3 number 1 picks in the top 10 for 3 years in a row, and now you could ask what the hell is the GM doing? But I think you have to. It's the most transcendent and important position on the field.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say they necessarily got it right, but give credit to Arizona that did that after, you know, taking Josh Rosen and the very next year took Kyler Murray. And now there's talks that this year they're going to go QB again. So you just got to keep swinging until you hit one. And I don't think the Packers hit one with Love, but we'll see.
No. And the year started off, I thought he was doing really well. And then it just faded. And they're going to be there. They're going to be at the top of the draft. So they're going to have an opportunity to take one of those good quarterbacks. All right. So there you go. Our hot takes will get hotter as we go along. So we appreciate you guys being with us. Ryan, this was fun, man. I can't wait to get back at it next week. And we'll update the audience on there on kind of the subjects and the rundown for next week. By the way, tell everybody where they can follow you and keep in touch with you about what you're working on, not only here at Sportsnaut, but also at the LA Football Network.
Yeah, thrilled to be doing this every week, Scott. So thank you. But can find me on Twitter at Ryan Dyrud, LAFB. Our main Twitter handles are LAFB Network, and LAFBnetwork.com is the website where we cover all LA football teams.
There you go. You can also find me there as well, LV Gully, and check out the work that I do. I write about the Raiders. I write about baseball, basketball, you name it. You'll see me up there on sportsnaut.com. And make sure you stop by, but sign up for the newsletter from sportsnaut.com. By the way, in the morning, you get that. It's great. It gives you a whole rundown. You can check out the latest from the website, and we certainly appreciate that. So we will check it out. And by the way, we want to thank all of you for being here for our inaugural show. We will be back next week. We'll probably have some whiz bangs and stuff too, some logos and all that kind of stuff. But Ryan and I just want to get on the air and talk to you guys, right? I mean, we had to talk about some football this week.
Yes, sir. That's right. Always good to be on.
Yes, it is. All right. So we appreciate you guys being with us. For our producer, Dawson Smith, and Ryan Dyrud, I'm Scott Gulbransen. This has been the NautZone. We will see you next Wednesday. Take care.